Would like to call the order of the Pleasant Grove City Council, our work session this afternoon, Tuesday, March the 29th, 2022. And welcome all of the council members that are here and a lot of the city directors and staff and the other people who have joined us here this evening. Welcome. We'll turn the time over to our city manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Just by way of work session, we have a ton of items. We only have an hour, and we really need to get through these items, mainly because we have a couple of council members who cannot stay for our council meeting. So the budget items are last on our agenda, but without further ado, let's get going. So first item of business, I'm going to turn over to the mayor and have him present that one.
Okay, our first item is to ask Marty to come forward along with your family. And this is a sad day for us, but we would like to recognize you as your service for the last 7 years. Is that right?
Coming on 7 years in June, it would have been 7. Yeah.
And we have this for you.
Awesome.
Retiring your number.
Yeah, retiring your number, and
Gonna hang it from the rafters.
and you may want to keep that, just in case when you retire someday, you may want to come back. Okay,
right.
and we won't have the cost of having to do that again, but you never know. And we have for you a plaque of your service you did in Pleasant Grove.
What about us?
Okay, that's coming. Okay.
Oh.
I spelled my name wrong.
Oh my God.
Kathy. Okay. Now, this is what you kids get, okay? You've got your own street up there. Marty, we've got 2 of these for you. You know, they do them in 2, so anyway, I don't think it's legally you can put it on your street. But anyway, hey, you can put it you can do by the front door, you know, so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marty.
And we're grateful you're still going to be around a little bit. We'll still get to see you.
Thank you.
Family.
And we thank you guys for all your support of your dad and what he's done for Pleasant Grove. And especially your wife.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're going to miss him. We're going to miss him.
Yeah, let's do a photo.
We need a photo of you guys, so go up front there.
Mason, get it there.
Rolling your eyes, man. Hey, you got this in front of you?
Yeah, we got Photoshop, we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's 3, 2, 1.
Love you. We should have had another one that said city engineer.
Okay, we'll go to our next item.
Next item is new employees that we've hired in the last couple months. So we're going to call them up by department and have them be introduced. So we will start with, Tyler, and then we'll go Neil, and then Daniel.
Daniel's down there yelling, already called me.
Mayor and City Council. We're looking for city games to come back and get basketball going again, but just want, yeah. Our new Assistant Recreation Director, Sean Whittaker. And so
Great.
we're excited to have him on board. He brings a lot of experience. He was in Lehigh and then he went to Provo and now he's here with us. And so, any questions or anything?
Yeah, where are you from?
Born and raised in Orem.
In Orem. So
Yes.
an Orem Tiger or?
I was an Orem Tiger,
Okay.
yes. And so I born and raised in Orem. And I still live there. I have 4 children, ages ranging from 7 to 16 years old, and they're a handful. Oldest one just started driving, and that's absolutely
And
terrifying.
a blessing.
Yeah, huge help with carpool and everything, but yeah, terrifying. Graduated in recreation management from UVU and been doing it ever since. So like he said, I was with Lehigh Recreation for just under 10 years, and then I spent the last little over 4 years with Provo Recreation. So excited to be joining Pleasant Grove.
Well, we're glad we've got you.
Yeah,
I just have one question. Do you play pickleball?
I do.
How
I'm
soon?
not as good as Tyler.
Was that like on the job description?
Need to know.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
We've got 3 of Pleasant Grove's newest employees. Scott assured me I've introduced myself enough. Tim Boren and Gary Thornton, and I'm going to let them introduce where they are in the organization and a little bit about themselves.
Hi guys, I'm Timothy Boren. Just grew up in Provo. I still live there. I'm married and have 2 young girls. Olivia is 9. She just turned 9. And Avery is 5 years old. And I like to play basketball and volleyball. That's kind of what I like to do mostly. I'm a city or engineer inspector, and mostly I've been testing concrete and soil compaction, so I'm real familiar with the structures and stuff that we're inspecting. But Ryan's teaching me all the ropes really good. So I'm grateful to be with you guys. It's awesome experience for me. I think it's a good, awesome opportunity.
Great.
Great. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Gary Thornton. I was born and raised in Chico, California. Then I went to University of Nevada, got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering in 2018. I spent 3.5 years working for a private engineering firm in Reno, and then my wife and I moved out here last year, and I've been working for the city for about a month now. And I'm a staff engineer. I'm working under Aaron, and I've been working on a lot of things. I've been doing plan review. I've prepared some DRCs. I've done other things like that, and I'm really happy to be here and be working in the city.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Wow, look at all this.
Mayor, Council, I have here next to me amazing guys that we're gonna rock. We're gonna rock the department. It's gonna be really good. So to my right, this is Paul Douglas. He plays pickleball. For sure he does. And to my left,
Please, Peter.
so Paul is gonna be the permit tech. So he's gonna be in charge of tracking exactly what the permits are. He's the one that is gonna be managing from submittal till issuing the permit. That's what Paul is gonna do for us. And to my left, I have Jacob Hawkins. Jacob is from Missouri and then from Texas and then from a lot of places. He's gonna introduce himself, but he's gonna be our new city planner. I'm really excited about the future of our department with those two new guys. So I'm gonna give Paul some time to introduce himself, and then Jacob, and we'll go from there.
I'm from Orem, kind of just raised there. I have, my schooling background is, I went to UVU for drafting technology, so I did a lot of homes, designed shooting ranges for like 7 years. So I have a lot of plans and, reading plans and making plans in the background. So I think that'll help a lot with the transition between all the departments and getting all the plans together. And then I have a urban planning degree from University of Utah. I've worked at Bluffdale in planning and Provo City in zoning enforcement, which was a dark time of my life. So yeah, I've worked for Provo Bluffdale. Glad to be here, and I do play a lot of pickleball when I'm not working. So too much.
Welcome.
If you see her up there, please beat her.
I did. She beat me last week.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you speak that into the mic just a little bit louder for the record?
Sid is the best pickleball player I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you, Paul.
And that's why he got hired.
Well, no, I actually said you beat me. I know who your boss is, so don't even try.
Okay, all right.
And I'm Jacob Hawkins. So I was born here in like Provo area, was living here for about 7 years, and then my parents decided to up and move to Missouri. And I was like, that's a really big, big distance. I don't know what's going on here, but we lived there for about 20 some odd years, and then I served a mission in California, came back to Missouri, and did some schooling where I got my degree in community and regional planning. And then I had a few internships in Missouri and in Illinois. And then I moved to Lubbock, Texas for my first job, where I was a city planner there for a year and a half. And then I'm here now. So I'm here to be closer to family and to not be where it's flat anymore. So
Yes,
but yeah, I'm really excited to be here and
Oh,
work with all you guys.
thank you.
You've done well, Daniel.
Yeah, good hires.
I was just reviewing the standings of our NCAA basketball tournament.
Yeah,
Paul, you're number one, right, on our basketball thing?
so I didn't know who that was.
That's Paul.
Wow.
Now, what he doesn't know is he's not eligible for the grand prize because he hasn't been here long enough.
Oh,
We changed rules as we go,
That's
Paul.
right.
I'm in 20th. I just wanted to beat Neil. But how do we have to get rid of the 19 others? Is there a way to get rid of 19 more?
Well, I'm number 5, so no.
Okay, dang it.
We can go 5 or 4 up. Yes, we can get rid of those.
Okay, for a reason.
Anyway,
Tyler, where were you?
good job, Paul.
Where
So
you
far, it's not over.
So far,
There's still
the
3 more
day
games.
is not over.
There's still the. Okay, next up is we've invited Sam Taylor to come. He's the one, the consultant that's doing our general plan. And he's going to walk through briefly with you kind of the timelines and what they have in front of us so that you're up to date on this, particularly as we have an open house coming up this Thursday from 5 to 7 here in the community room. Just so you know, with the open house, you're free to come if you want, but it's not a forum where we're going to be having you speak. It will be run by the consultants, and they'll be talking to people and getting input on some of the general plan things. So like I said, you're invited, but the star of the show will be Sam when we do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sam. You have a HDMI connection?
Can you believe they've eliminated these from the computers now? See if that goes through. Nope. I don't know what's going on.
Hit Windows P.
There we go. Awesome. Okay. Thank you all for having me here. I'm Sam Taylor, as Scott mentioned, and I'm thrilled to be working with you. I grew up in Pleasant Grove through my junior high and high school years. My wife grew up here from birth, so it's nice to be back in the old stomping grounds and working with you on this, this important project. So, and now that's gone. I don't know what has happened.
We all look over to our.
Duplicate. Maybe that'll help. It's gone.
Yeah, I would unplug and plug back in.
Okay. No, Windows.
Okay, now
That'll
it's
work.
mirroring your screen.
Okay. Didn't give me a hard time last time I did this.
No, it worked just fine.
All right. Okay.
I work with a group called Landmark Design. We're a and there it goes again. Whatever. We are a landscape architecture and planning group out of Salt Lake City.
We will email you this presentation.
Yes, there's not much to really show, but and we are joined by a couple of sub-consultants that will be assisting us in this effort, looking at transportation and housing and economic development. But we do a lot of general plans throughout the region. As I mentioned, I'm really excited to be working on this one with you. Scott asked me to kind of come in here and just kind of give you an overview of what to expect throughout the year as we're working on this. What I can't even get to my own slides so I can walk through the schedule. Basically, the process to expect from this, we have multiple components that we want to get input from the community and city staff and yourselves and the Planning Commission to make sure that this effort really reflects the vision of Pleasant Grove. The object of this document is to be an advisory guide to you as you're enacting new policy over the next 10 to 20 years. So it's really big picture ideas. We're not getting into really specific detail here, but it needs to really establish a vision of what Pleasant Grove wants to become. And so as part of that, we have multiple levels of how we're going to be interacting with the community. We have an advisory committee that is put together of a couple of yourselves, a couple of members of the Planning Commission, as well as representatives from the business community and residents. They are a great group. We're really excited about the committee. We met with them a couple weeks ago, and they are full of comments and ideas, and it's fantastic. We're excited about that group. So we'll be meeting with them regularly through the process every couple months to check in. Their role is to guide us through this, make sure that we are interpreting what we're hearing from the public correctly, and guiding the plan in the right direction. We also have a project webpage, Growing Together PG is kind of the tagline, which we will be posting tracking the whole project through, and it'll also be the landing page for people to submit comments and participate in the online outreach components that we'll have through this process. We're also going to have three different public meetings that we're going to be utilizing. The first is this Thursday, which is an open house format, but we're also going to have an online component for those that can't make it. So the object of this phase of the public input is really at large to try and identify what aspects of life in Pleasant Grove are great, what are not so great, and try and identify what people see as a need to improve and what the overall vision should be. We're going to take that feedback and run with it and develop a set of guiding principles for the plan, the overarching framework for the general plan and how it guides all the different elements, land use, housing, economics, transportation, et cetera. We'll arrive at some basically concepts, some different alternatives of how things might play out in terms of land use and transportation. And we'll present those different ideas at another public meeting right about the month of May. We've talked in our committee about possibly tagging on to Strawberry Days as part of that. So we're going to be thinking creatively on how we can engage the community that way, because it seems like a perfect opportunity since everyone's going to be out having fun. So we'd like to take advantage of that. And then our third public meeting, after we've heard the input on the different concept alternatives, we'll then take it to a final direction for the general plan, and we'll create the draft document of the plan. The third public meeting will be around about September. We'll have a public open house, and the public will be able to come see the plan, the contents of it, and provide comment then. At that point, once any revisions that need to happen are made, we'll then go through an adoption process through the end of the year. So that'll then go through the Planning Commission. They'll review and provide their recommendations, and then eventually it'll see your eyes towards the end of the year. That said, we would love to have you involved sooner than the end of the year. I think it's to your benefit to track this. Come out to the public meetings if you can, take part. I think it has such promise to be a fun opportunity, and we would love to have you participate and guide the public through this and help them with their questions. So anyway, that's pretty much sums it up. As I mentioned, this Thursday we're going to have the meeting here from 5 to 7. As the public comes through, they're going to have all sorts of different boards and activities that they'll be able to provide comment and input on different aspects of the city, from land use and parks and transportation, housing. And then we're also going to have an online component on the website, which will have a questionnaire and an interactive map where they can drop pins and provide comments to geographic related areas. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to get involved. We've gone through multiple channels to advertise this, so we're expecting a good turnout using the city's social media, the reader board, banners. We've enlisted the business community members on our advisory committee to use their social media platforms to get the word out on this. We've contacted HOAs for some of the larger multifamily projects that have, email lists. So we're really trying to get the word out on this, and I think we're excited. We're looking forward to it. So, any questions?
Any questions?
What role does the advisory committee play moving forward?
So I guess the word's kind of self-explanatory. Advisory committee, that they're really there to help guide us as consultants to really have an understanding of the pulse of your community. I grew up here, so I have a little bit of a sense of Pleasant Grove, but my team, we're looking at this from outside eyes. And so the goal of the advisory committee is to kind of provide a voice from the community within the process to help us make sure that whatever we're recommending is on the right track. Based on what we are summarizing from what we've heard from the public, we're going to condense all that information. Are we interpreting that correctly? And that's the kind of voice that they're going to provide.
And how often will they be meeting from now until the end of the process?
Every couple of months. So we'll probably have a meeting after each public meeting and leading up to each public meeting. So check in, these are the results that we've heard, and this is what came out of that. And in preparation for the next one, this is what we're planning on doing with the public, and how can we change course and make sure we're on the right track for that.
Okay. So with your last meeting in September, when do you think everything will be able to be presented back to the mayor and council for kind of that final update or all the information that's been gathered?
So I think here we're anticipating to have the draft plan completed by the 1st of October. So that last public open house, we'll receive comments from that, make additional changes, and then it's really, at that point, it's going to be in the hands of the Planning Commission and the City Council to make any future changes from that point.
Okay.
Anything else, council? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Look forward to Thursday night.
Yeah. I will. Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Sam.
All
Our
right,
next
we ready to
item.
talk budget? First item of business is we're going to talk about our project bonding options. So there is two pieces of paper that you have here that have 5 options in regards to public works, storm drain, cemetery, some of these projects that we've been talking about the last year or two. As we go down this list, okay, so let me take a step back. We had put together a plan, and we talked about a bond for $40 million to be able to do a new public works facility, a storm drain basin on the pipe plant, a pipe to the lake, you know, the road improvements for the pipe plant, and expanding the cemetery. As we've had those discussions, the feedback from the city council was, let's do this in some bite-sized chunks here, and let's see what we can do to break this up over the next few years. So with that, we put together 5 options for you, and these are just options that we put together as staff. On the top, there are 6 projects that we're specifically talking about, and so really this is kind of your menu. And if you want to do something other than the 5 options that are on here, just give us feedback and we'll put the menu together and show you what the cost would be in order to do that. So let me talk through the 6 projects that were a part of this initial 40 million, just so we're all on the same page. So project number 1 is what we call demo and road improvements to the pipe plant property. So this project would essentially clear the property, put in the street improvements, which would be curb gutter, sidewalk, and upgrade the road that surrounds the pipe plant. Now, depending on how we piecemeal this, some of these things, for instance, if we just did the storm drain basin, we would need to do the improvements for the storm drain basin, but we wouldn't necessarily have to do the rest of the property at the same time. That's something we could push to later. Now, my feeling is it'd be nice to get that thing cleaned up as soon as possible, and just really put all those street improvements and road improvements in as soon as possible, even though we might not fully develop that property. Now, we have our park project that we're still working through, and the timing of that is still undetermined. But that will put most of the street improvements, curb gutter, sidewalk is tied to the development of the park. So not to the cemetery, not to the storm drain basin, but to the development of the park. However, if we were to go in and do all that, that's what we call project number 1, with the understanding let's say if we were to do that this summer, we have a bunch of stuff stored out there. So we'd have to figure out where to store the stuff if we're gonna raise the property and take all the buildings out. We could possibly put in all the street improvements, tear down most of the buildings and leave just a couple up so we can use it for storage until we get our new public works facility built, but that's just something we have to keep in mind that we are storing things out there. Project number 2 is 2000 West Channel to the Lake, or what we refer to as pipe to the lake. This is a $6 million project, of which we have $4.5 million of federal funds set aside for this. We do need another $1.5 million to finish this project. This project is critical that it gets done, that it gets funded this year. Partially because right now, when we have excess water in our community, it goes down to the Grove, down to the old Atrium property, and that's where that water gathers. Now, if that's gonna be developed here in the next couple of years, that water needs to go somewhere. And that's why that pipe to the lake is critical, because there's a culvert under I-15 all set up, ready to go. So that water's, we just got to get that pipe out to the lake. So when that gets developed, that water has a place to go.
Scott, just
Yeah.
a question. So, in the recent pipe plant planning, there was talk about keeping the water there on that property. If that's the case, does it change the scope of this at
So they
all?
weren't
For the size of the pipe or anything like that?
So the new plan wasn't suggesting the water stays there. It just detains the water temporarily, but it eventually sends it back.
So, I
Yeah,
understand, but I guess the question is, we were looking for a pretty big pipe going underneath the freeway and out to the lake. If we retain more water at the pipe plant, does it change the size of the pipe or,
so the
anything
culvert-
like that? The culvert down?
Yeah, the culvert under I-15 was put in 10 years ago. So that's already set. It's 54 inch, I think, if I remember. But the master plan of all the storm draining was making an assumption that we were gonna have a detention basin at the pipe plant, and then we were gonna have this pipe to the lake. So everything we're planning is already kind of centered around that. Project 3 is purchasing the public works property. Now, we were looking at a particular piece of property which recently just got sold, and so that is now, that what we call the Global Coatings property has been sold. And so that, well, it's under contract, and talking to the owners, they are planning to close on that next week. So that reduces our options on where we would do that. However, the person, we have a donor that is willing to fund the purchase of this property. The mayor and I have a meeting tomorrow with the donor to discuss their willingness to fund that this year. So that we need to lock down that property as soon as possible before our option number 2 gets sold out from under us.
Sorry, maybe I'm confused. If it's sold to another buyer,
Yes.
so what would be our options?
We always had 2 options.
Okay,
We have what we call the ACE property, which is
Yep.
the property that surrounds it.
Yep.
That's still available.
okay,
And then we had the Global Coatings, which was across the street.
yep, and that's the one that's under
That's
contract.
the one that just recently sold.
all right.
So, so with that, we need to get on that. So in my mind, project 2 and 3 need to happen soon. And so, now project 3 would be funded by, we would carry the bond on that project, but it would be funded by the donor. So we just need to make sure the donor's willing to do that with the understanding that we're gonna lock this property down, but we might not build a facility still for a couple years. Make sure that the donor's comfortable with that. Project number 4 is the storm drain basin that would be out at the pipe plant, which we do have the new concept plan for the park out there, which does incorporate the storm drain. The engineers do need to review that so that they can take a look at what the landscape architect for the park is proposing for storm drain, and the engineers need to say, okay, that's gonna work. Now, our anticipated cost of that's about $5 million. And so that is something that if the park gets delayed, then we can go ahead and build the basin. It's also something that if the park is built and we just reserve the land and maybe we don't build that basin right away, maybe that's a project that we push for a couple of years. We just want to make sure that we talk, that is a separate project and can be separately done. Project 5 is our cemetery expansion. We do have we think about a 5-year window before we're gonna need these additional cemetery plots. So that one can be pushed as well, but just not for an extended period of time. Because we'll need to fund that and then build it, and that will take a couple of years to do that. And then project number 6 is the actual public works facility. So that's the big ticket item, and that's the one that, if we choose to do, that will be the largest bond that we will do. So what you have in front of you, and I'll walk through these 5 options. I don't think the intent is that we decide this right now today. I think the intent is to give you this information, give you a chance to absorb it. Call if you have questions, and so that we can answer those questions. There's a lot of information here, but this will, I think, get it in your minds, okay, what are we comfortable with funding this year if we were to issue a bond to do some of this? So option 1 is to do projects 1, 2, and 3. So that's the demo and road improvements for the pipe plant property. That'd be the pipe to the lake and the purchase of the public works property. That would be roughly, we'd say about a $9.7 million bond. The debt service would be $686,000. The general fund portion of that debt service would be $176,000. The donor would be paying $367,000, and then the storm drain for the pipe to the lake would be $142,000. These would be annual payments. We have an asterisk under the general fund portion. We already have the cemetery that is helping fund a portion of this project, because if we did the full road improvements, curb, gutter, and sidewalk, the cemetery would be on the hook for a part of that. And the storm drain would be on the hook for a part of that. And so we are making sure that the storm drain fund and the cemetery fund pays their share of those improvements. So if we do that, we would take $46,931 from the cemetery fund. We would need $130,000 from the general fund, which we'll be talking about in a minute when we go over our one-pager. And then this would require a 5.6% increase in just the storm drain fund, which would be about 89 cents per month on somebody's bill. So the ask of the residents would be 89 cents per month for us to fund this part of the project, if we did those three options.
Is 89 cents.
Option 2 is the same, plus Project 5, which would be the cemetery expansion. And as you look through it, it just flows through the same way. The bond would be just under 11.5 million. The general fund portion of that would be 303,000, of which 75,000 would come from the cemetery, and 228,000 would come from other general fund monies. And then that would also have the same increase for the storm drain, which would be 89 cents per month. Option 3. There's a typo on this one. This is projects 2, 3, and 4. So, because projects 2 and 3 are involved in all these. So 2, 3, and 4 would be the pipe to the lake, purchasing the public works property, and then doing the storm drain basin at the pipe plant property. On option number 3, there is no general fund contribution because everything would be run through the enterprise funds. And so the storm drain portion of that would be 701,000, which would be a 27% increase just in the storm drain on their bills, which if you put that to dollars would be $4.39 per month would go up on the storm drain bill. So that would get us the pipe to the lake and the storm drain basin completed at the pipe plant. Option 4, again, I think there needs to be a 2 in there. That would be the pipe to the lake, purchase the public works property, storm drain basin, and the cemetery. So pretty much close to everything except for the actual public works facility. Again, as you look through that, the general fund portion's $98,524. The bond on that would be $17.5 million. Just
Scott, did
yeah.
you say we need to include number 2 on that?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah, number 2 is included on all of them.
okay.
That's the pipe to the lake. So that one would be $98,000 from our general fund and 27.7% increase, so similar to option 3, $4.39 a month. Option 5 is pipe to the lake, the purchase of the property for the public works, and then actually building the public works facility. So this would be the biggest one, about $24 million would be the bond. The general fund portion would be $410,000. That would be, taken out of, again, we have that portion funded per se, and we'll talk through exactly what that means, but there would be the general fund portion of $410,000. The storm drain would be $311,000, and then you can see culinary water, secondary water, and sewer. So the increases, so we'd have the storm drain increase, the storm drain would be just the pipe to the lake, and then the storm drain would be paying a portion of the actual building. So when we add up all these increases, there's a 12.3% increase, a 1.1% increase, and a 1.7% increase on storm drain, culinary water, and secondary water. And when you add all those up, that would be $2.94 per month. So if we did this option, we would need $2.94 per month in total on the utility bill, and then we'd have the general fund contribution, and we'd be able to build the facility. Now, we wouldn't be able to do the storm drain facility, we wouldn't be able to do the cemetery. Those would be projects we'd push for a year or two. But this is the outline. So you capture, it's kind of a menu. So we want you to capture the flavor. And again, there are more options than the 5 that we've presented. So if the council wants to take a look at this and say, all right, I mean, you could even say, we're comfortable to bond this much, what can we get for that? And then we could come back and present the items that we could do. But we want to make sure the general fund contribution, we've budgeted $750,000 out of the general fund, because initially we were working on funding the full $40 million. So that, right now, that's built into our budget. Chances are we're not going to use that $750,000, all of it. Now, $350,000 of that is actually money from general fund that we moved to roads. So if we decide not to do the Public Works facility, I would suggest that we put that money, keep putting that back into roads and keep that unallocated, because we're gonna need that in the future. But that, and the cemetery is at $75,000 a year. That's already planned and built into the budget. But that does leave us $300 and some thousand left that is unallocated out of the general fund. And when I get to the one pager, I'll talk through that and what that means.
So Scott, I just have one
Yeah.
question as I'm looking through these projects. If we don't do, if we don't do the storm drain detention basin and other piping, does it make the 2000 West channel to the lake? I mean, you have to have the water to get to the lake, right?
So we already have
So-
water going down there. We don't have a basin right now at the pipe plant, and we already.
So this is taking it from, well, let's say atrium,
Atrium's property.
down to the lake.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's what the pipe to the lake, yes.
Okay.
It's taking it from that
Yeah.
land to there, yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
So that's, we have water collecting throughout the city that's ending up on Atrium's property.
Yeah.
Even before we do this basin at the pipe plant. So it's critical we get that water to the lake, but the pipe plant isn't as critical. That is something that we can push a couple of years
Yeah.
and do later.
Okay.
We just have to consider if we're gonna develop that park, if we wanna make it part of, and do that at the same time. And the timing of the funding of the park, as we talked about in our meeting last time, it's gonna take, landscape architect says it's gonna take him a year to design it and get it ready. And so, depending on how we're gonna pay the landscape architect, usually, you know, you borrow the money so that you can pay your landscape architect. If somebody's willing, if the donor is willing to front the money for that year, then we won't have to bond until next year in order to fund the park. Now, there's the moving pieces of what the donor is gonna come back and say, I'm willing to fund this, city, I need you to fund this. And that's a number we don't have just yet. And that's why I want us to be careful when we're committing our general fund dollars, because we still might need some of that in order to help fund the park. And so we have all these things kind of happening sort of at one time or swirling around us. And as staff, we're doing our best to try to corral the numbers as they come so that we can make sense of them and get them in front of you so you can make decisions. Because I think we have a lot of decisions that we're gonna make between today and before we adopt this budget. I'm hoping we have all this planned and figured out, and that's our intent.
You know what I would love to see, Scott, is 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I can do those numbers, but.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, and 4.
That's the
which is-
15 million.
So 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be option
Probably a little
3
more- Probably a little more than,
plus 1.8 million.
exactly.
So that
Yep.
would be a bond
About 16.8.
for
17
17
million.
million.
But that's not the building, that's not the.
No.
That would
No,
not be
that's
the
just-
building.
That's the demo,
So that
the
would be
pipe
no
plant.
cemetery, no building.
the pipe, the purchase, the public works property, and the storm drain detention
Yeah.
basin.
And again, I don't know how far you want to chase this today.
Yeah, we're kind of short, because we
My
can,
preference is you take some time and look through this, and then we'll have this back on the agenda in 2 weeks, on the 12th. And then we can get to the nitty-gritty of, okay, what do we want? And we will have talked to the donor by then as well and have that information, which should tie into the park and the
That's what
purchase
we
of the
need that.
public works property. That'll be good
We need that.
information for us to have.
okay.
So, based on what I have and short of decision-making, is there any other questions about the options?
No.
Okay, thank you. You guys,
Again,
look at this.
thanks to Denise. I mean,
Thanks,
I'm the one
Denise.
presenting. She's the one that did all the work to get it to this place. She's the one that crunches the numbers to make sure
give me a migraine if I
we
was.
know where we're at. Okay.
Okay, let's go
We
to
ready to
the,
move on to budget. So we have 2 different one-pagers for you. And again, we're working on a little bit of a moving target, which I think we'll have more information in 2 weeks, but I want to just talk about a couple things. So one of these, and I should have numbered them, but one of them at the top on the full-time wages under uses, one says 5% and one says 8%. You guys see the difference between the two? So let's go with the 5% one to start.
Number one, we'll number that number one.
Okay, we'll number that number one. I'm gonna write that. Now, on number one, this is what we proposed to you a couple weeks ago. This was to do 5% for each employee, which is equal to $525,000 of general fund money for the city. With the, on the bottom, we have what we call our property tax discussion, which right now as a city, as staff, we are suggesting the holding the rate of the property tax. And by holding the rate, if we need to do some more for public safety due to the nature of the market in public safety, which is somewhat different, not completely different, but somewhat different than the other markets. It's just there's a lot of upward pressure from larger cities, really particular to police and somewhat for fire. So we've put that there, that if we're going to do, let's say 8% for public safety, we'd need another 3%, of which we'd recommend that you would do that through the hold the rate process, through the truth in taxation process. Now, we're hoping to get a firm to give us some consulting advice on some of these issues. And so we're not, I'd say, totally settled on that just yet. But as we engage with this consultant, we can have those discussions of, is that the best way to tackle this issue? There might be a different way to tackle this issue. So right now as staff, this is just what we're in essence proposing, but again, this is something that we can change before we get ready to adopt our budget. So nothing has really changed since the last time we did. Oh, we're gonna give Tina credit for a financial catch for us. When we presented this 2 weeks ago, we have built into the general fund budget $150,000 to go towards the bond payment for Hill Center Theater. Now, the structure of that bond is the first payment is not going to be until 2 years from now. So they're structuring the bond so that they can get built and they can start generating revenue and then pay the bonds. And there's the way to do it. It's called capitalized interest. And that's the way that this bond's. So that $150,000 we don't need for that bond payment this year or next year. Now, we do have to account for it in 3 years. But what that did is we had that built into the budget. So that has freed up that money for us to use elsewhere. Now, you probably don't recall, but under item number one last year, we were still $200 and some thousand out of balance. So with that money and with Denise and Kyler going through some of the personnel costs and the benefits costs, they found some money there too that was unallocated that we put back really into the general fund. So with that, if we were to stick with where we're at right now today, we still have about $9,700 unallocated. Now, what that gets us is the 5% for each of the employees. That covers the part-time wages at $200,000, covers the city council compensation and our medical insurance. Now, we still have this $750,000 number, which right now is high. If we have money become available, depending on our decision-making on the public works and the storm drain projects, that could free up potentially a couple $100,000. If it does that, we would like, well, there's a couple options. When I talk to option B, we can put that towards salaries or more people. That would be staff. So we're not quite, we've already prioritized our recommendation to you that if more money becomes available, these are the next employees we would like to hire, and we'll review that in just a minute. But that's, we need to talk about wages a little bit more than what we were previously talking about. So we have the detective pay increase, and then we have prioritized the individuals that we need to hire, the positions. So we have the building permit tech. The reason why that's number one is because you met the person today. That position has been hired. We have police officer number 2, firefighter number 3, parks operator 4, and our HR generalist number 5. And then we have some minor operational budget needs that we have at about $30,500. So that's where this option shakes out currently. But let me transition to page 2. And here's what made me nervous. I was talking to American Fork. Right now, according to our salary survey specific to police and fire, we're about $1.50 behind them in wages. The 8% that we were proposing was going to get us caught up generally. Now, I knew that they were going to do a wage increase too. They just did one in December. And I thought they'll maybe do a little bit, but they are proposing 8%. Now, okay, their council has not approved that. That's what's being proposed from their city manager to the city council. If we do 8% and they do 8%, we're still going to be that $1.50 behind. They're doing 8% across the board for all their employees, okay? So not just public safety, but all their employees. Right now, we have a salary survey going out to all the city managers on what they're doing for employee wages this year, percentages. That has not been completed yet. I should have that information by April 12th, because that could affect maybe how we look at this. Now, if it comes back and American Fork's kind of the anomaly, we're probably okay. If we come back and everybody's doing something similar to what American Fork's doing, we probably just need to have further discussion. Now, how we would fund that, if you look at page number 2, this is proposing 8% across the board, and then a 3% on top of that for public safety, so it'd be 11% for public safety, which right now puts us about $300,000 out of balance. Now, that $300,000 could potentially be made up with this $750,000 set aside for public works. Or we could do something less than that and maybe even be able to hire a couple more positions. I mean, those are all discussions that we need to have. So for the purposes of today, I just don't have enough information to really say this is where we need to go. But I wanted to make sure that this was on your radar. Okay. I've been doing this, I'm going to go old man on you here, okay? I've been doing this 20-some years. I've never seen across the board 8% or 11% ever. I mean, it's somewhat unprecedented times, unprecedented, inflation pushing against us and things like that, and the competitiveness between the cities on attracting employees. So this is not a money grab. This is the city administrator, me just saying, hey, we need to consider this. And council, you just need to figure out what you're comfortable with, because I'm not so sure there's just this easy answer that we're all going to look at that and just say, okay, man, that just feels really good. Now, we want to make sure the employees are compensated fairly. That's kind of how I see the world. But we also have budget limitations. So it's not like just this open check free-for-all. So stick with me is what I'm saying. We'll continue to get more information. Again, I don't think we need to have that decision today on how we want to handle that, but it's a concern. It's a concern that it's just a ton of money, and it's a concern that we have the competitiveness of what we're doing with the other cities. So everything else is, between page 1 and 2 is the same except for the salary requirements, or the ask for the salary. So are there any questions on the one pager here?
Council?
No questions.
Thank you.
Okay, you'll see this again in 2 weeks, and I'm hoping with more supplementary information so we can start getting to decision-making. According to our budget, so we're only meeting once in April. That's April 12th. Then we'll have 3 weeks between meetings. Is it May 3rd, I think? I can't remember the first Tuesday in May.
We won't be here.
On the 3rd? Okay. So on that meeting, that's when we're required to adopt our tentative budget, which is really us presenting the budget to the public in full. It does not lock us into anything. It just, and usually we're pretty good as a city that by the time we've gotten to that level of budget, we're 95% of the way there. There's still some tweaks that we make. This year, I don't know, it might be a little different. We might adopt a tentative budget, but we still might be debating what we're doing with the employee costs and things like that. So, but just keep in mind, that's our timeline. And then we adopt the final budget, our second meeting in June, which I think is the 21st, if I remember right. And now, if we're going to go through the truth and taxation process, then we actually don't adopt our budget that day. We state at that day that we're going to go through truth and taxation, and then we would adopt our budget in August. So again, we'll continue to walk you through that process as we go. So next page is our supplemental summary, budget 2023. This is the reading glasses one. It is helpful to get it all on one page, and I mean, apologize for the small print, but when you have 2 pages and you kind of have to go back and forth, it makes it tough. So there really isn't, there's only one change on this from what was proposed 2 weeks ago, and that is the ambulance. The ambulance, initially we had a number in here at $320,000. They've come back, the fire department, and has said that it's now $350,000. And that does not include the heart, what do we call it? The heart monitor, which is $30,000. So initially, we thought that number had the heart monitor and the ambulance at $320. So now that number's $380. But what we've built into here is $350 for the ambulance, and then we took the $30,000 for the heart monitor and have put it into the unfunded portion of the capital. Now, I've talked to a couple of you, and there's been some discussion on the ambulance and the understanding the need for the ambulance, and I think it'd be appropriate we can have Drew come and talk about that. Or let's potentially push the ambulance for a year, and let's get the cemetery water irrigation system all put in. So that's an option for the council to consider, is that if we want to push the ambulance for a year, we can get the whole irrigation system put in. If you want the ambulance this year, then we would just phase the irrigation system out at the cemetery, in the old part of the cemetery. So are there any questions or input, feedback you want regarding the Budget 2023 supplementary summary?
Council. How do you feel on the ambulance?
I think we push it back a year.
Yeah, I'm with Brent. We've really changed all of our equipment from the vehicle equipment. We have all new machines, but if we push that a year, that would sure be helpful.
You guys okay with that?
I'm hearing 2 of you say that, or
Well,
how the rest of you feel?
I would like to understand a need. I think I'd like to understand, and what does that look like if we push it out a year? Just because I'm questioning.
Yeah, shall we have Drew come up and
Yeah,
talk about
Drew.
the need so we have an understanding?
Like, what does it look like if we push it out a year?
Well, what we're looking at, I guess, is really a 2 ambulance. We got the new ambulance, which is awesome. It's a great ambulance. The boxes we have, the chassis are fairly new. They're 6 years old. They're out of warranty now. Big deal, not a huge thing, but the boxes that we have on those ambulances are 18 and 20 years old still, from the remounted boxes that we have. Could they last another year? Yeah, they might be. It's going to cost a little bit of money to keep them up, I think, to do a few things to them to do that. Yeah, I'll always take anything I can get as soon as I can. I'll bargain for it, try to get it, but it's something we're going to need, I think, pretty soon. At least another ambulance.
But we have 2 now, right?
No,
we have a new one?
No, just one new one.
We have a new one and we have an older one.
Yes,
Right?
2 old ones.
So 3?
So we've always had 3 ambulances. Yeah. And the third one is just a backup, just for whatever, and we'll use it on a wildland fire sometimes and a few things like that if we need to. So the second one is just between our call volume that we've had in the last year or so, we keep doubling up and trying to keep it staffed is the difference of that. And that's why we like to have the 2 new ambulances. That way, if we had 2 new ambulances fairly soon, that would set us up for a few years, at least,
But you still have the same problem as staffing.
We do right now, yes.
Yeah.
And depending on whether grants come in, how that works with other, things like that, it's,
So the grant that's
questionable.
coming in will
That'll be increases 3 employees, if that comes up, be 1 per shift, yeah.
And I think my
Yeah.
question is, what is like projections of cost increase from now until next year?
I can't tell you, like this one, I thought I had enough in there this time, because that's why I put 320 in there, because last time was 275 for everything. We didn't do a monitor, we had a monitor on the side, because we got that with the other money, so I thought I had enough figured in there between, because he told us it's gonna go up a certain percentage, so I thought, this might be all right. Then once we kind of looked into it, started going through it, he gave us the bid back, and it was like, the chassis went up 15%, because nobody can find chassis. That's where a lot of the cost came from. The box itself went up a little bit. That's why it ended up being 350, is what it ended up coming to be. So monitor-wise, if we had to, we could let that go for a year or so. We have 2 monitors on there. I was gonna trade one in, an older one to get a new one, but monitors, we could probably, if we had to, let that one slide and work around that. It's not a huge issue at this point. But yeah, ambulance would always be great, but it's kind of what you guys decide, I guess, what it comes down to. But yeah, we could survive a year if we had to, but we'd always like to get, up on the new stuff.
We funded the fire department with a new fire engine.
Yes.
And a new ambulance, and
Yeah.
so that's why I think we wait for a year.
Yeah,
They
either way.
got a brush truck too.
Oh, and a brush truck, sorry.
Oh, yeah, and the brush truck,
Yeah, it's true. I'm not gonna complain. Yeah,
yeah.
so,
Okay.
that's what it is. Thanks.
I mean, I'd like to, the way I understand it, the cemetery system.
Yeah.
that will automate it, will be covering the entire, right now, if it's as is, it'll only be half of it will be done for that older section, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'd prefer to get it all done, because I think those costs are gonna go
I
up
do
as
too.
well. I think only doing that project halfway, it's gonna free up manpower, it needs to be done. We get some complaints about the cemetery, and it's just hard for our, staff to maintain that without having that system. I would rather have it done and just get it done,
Yeah.
instead of having it halfway done. So that would be my preference, if we can hold off on the ambulance for a year. I'd rather get that entire project done and free up that staff
Yes.
time to work on other things.
Good call.
I do have a question. So when you order an apparatus, like, is that when the funding is approved, or do you approve it when it's completed?
Well, so on the last one, when did we end up paying the check?
We paid for it when it's delivered to us, because we just barely paid for the fire truck. But sometimes they ask you to put something down, no one has, like, to build, but we haven't had to do that. So yeah, we order it and then we pay when it gets here.
So that's my question. We waited for a year to get the ambulance that we have right now. So even if we could say.
We could order it and then fund it next year,
and
right?
Fund it next year.
Yeah. And we can do that. We assume that we'll have the money there next year. I mean, the way things are going, there should be money to do that. But let us keep that in mind, and then as we get closer to adopting our budget, we'll revisit that discussion and see, we'll get a timeline from Drew. If it's a year, then we can have that discussion. That's what happened with the fire engine. I mean, it took a long time, and because of that, we had money set aside for that first payment, and then we didn't need
It
it.
was like a year and a half, wasn't it?
Pretty close, I think.
Yeah.
Well, they're about 2.5 now, isn't that right, Drew, for a fire truck? What they tell us at the factory are over 2+ years.
Yeah, depending on what it is, right, well, right now, you're probably, 400 days or more, it really depends on parts, what they're getting. Right now, it's hard to get anything and everything, it seems like.
Supply chain.
So it sounds like that's an option that we.
So if we push that, is everybody in agreeance that we just do the sprinkling system
Yeah.
there at the cemetery? Is that what we want
Let's
to do?
do that.
Okay, we'll make that change then in the budget, and I know we're more or less out of time. You have the second page, which shows the capital unfunded, the operational proposed, and the operational unfunded. So we did say under operational unfunded, if we have money for new employees, we would recommend a police officer, cemetery worker, and then a recreation full-time. So those are just there for now. Those are not funded, but if the money becomes available, we'll have that discussion. So nothing else has really changed on this other than we put the heart monitor on there as unfunded capital. Any questions? Okay, I've got to leave early from council meeting, so I'm gone next week. And I literally will not have cell reception. So part of this is going to be not by.
He won't turn his
Yes.
phone on, that's what he's telling you.
Part of
okay?
this is going to be, I'm not going to have a choice, and other times I will have a choice, but I don't think I'm going to turn my phone on. So Tina will be here all week, next week, and she should be able to handle 99.9% of whatever is thrown that way. So Joe, just wanted to let you know that since I won't be around to give a report. So with that, that's all we have for work session.
Okay, thank you. With that, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor, say aye.